Okay, so Zok to Hail the Gemara. Can you see the Gemara on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so yesterday we learned in the second half of the Mishnah a case where somebody was looking from a distance and he saw that there were people unauthorized eating his te'enim. So he screams out to them, Harei aleichem, all of you guys should be osur to eat his te'enim like a carbon. And then as he gets closer, he realizes that some of these people were people he definitely wouldn't have wanted to osur, such as his father and his brothers. So clearly, that's a nidrish kogus, and the Isser is not on the brothers and on the father. But now that part of the nidr is bottle, maybe it should invalidate the entire nidr. So the Shammai says, no, it does not. What remains Osir, what he wanted originally to Osir, the other people will still be Osir. And what he didn't want to Osir, which means for his father, would not be Osir. Neder shahuter mektsosai hutar kuloi, which we're soon going to see is the shita of Rabbi Akiva, and once he invalidates the neder that he made in relation to his father, the whole neder is now invalidated. And we're going to have a machloikis exactly how to understand this machloikis between Beisham and Basil, which mirrors the machloikis on Daf Samach Vav of Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanim. So let's go down to the Gemara. Tanan Hasam, we learned on Daf Samach Vav and Aleph a similar case, but not a case where it's nidrish kogus, where the neder is automatically invalid, rather a neder which we had to invalidate with a Pesach. Tanan Hasam, Hoischin b'Shavosas of Yom Tov. Someone made a neder not to eat, and then they told him, had you known that it's a chiyuv to eat on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and now with your neder, you're causing yourself to violate that, would you have made a neder? So that was a case of a Pesach. And he said, no, I wouldn't have. So, Barishaina, at first they used to think, mutar, with the Pesach, we don't invalidate and nullify the entire neder. We only nullify the part that he wouldn't have wanted to make, which would be Shabbos and Yom Tov. At Shabbat Rabbi Akiva, till Rabbi Akiva came along, the limit and his haras, neder shehuter miktsosai huter kulei. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Beis Shammai and Basil were long before Rabbi Akiva. So the Mefarshim explain that, in fact, this was a machlokes Beis Shammai and Basil. But at some point along the road, the shita of Basil was forgotten. At some point, the shita was forgotten. The shita of Beis Shammai of Basil was forgotten, and they said until Rabbi Akiva came, the limaid, and taught us and reminded us that there's a shita of Basil of neder shehuter miktsosai hutar kuloi, and in fact, the whole neder is invalid. Okay, so zokt the heilige Gemara. Tanan Hasam, Pesach Shabbos Yom Tovim, B'Shena Yomim Oisna Yom Mutar, V'Shakal Yom Musurim, At Shabbat Rabbi Akiva, V'Limad, the Neder Shehuter miktsosai hutar kuloi. Omar Rabba said, the Chula Alma, everybody holds Kol Heicha. So Sai Beis Shammai and Sai Basil agree, or Sai Rabbi Akiva and Sai the Rabbanim, because we're saying that the Machloikis Beis Shammai and Basil is the same Machloikis as that between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanim. The Chula Alma, everybody holds that Kol Heicha. Everybody holds that Kol Heicha, the Omar, if the person who is having charata on this neder of shkagos. So this neder that he made, that they should all be osir to eat his te'enim like a korban. If he said, Ilu hayisi yodea, had I known, she'aba beinechem, that my father is amongst the people who are eating these te'enim, hayisi yomer, what I would have said, kulchem asurim, all of you are osir, chutz me'apel, If that's what I would have said, now before we go weiter, let's compare that to what he actually did say. So if we go to our Mishnah, what he said was Harei Aleichem Carbon. So Harei, we'll see what the Aleph in the Bach says. So we get the exact Harei Aleichem, Harei Hein Aleichem. He said Harei Hein Aleichem Carbon. So he didn't specify any specific person when he answered it. Rather, he made one general neder on everybody. He made one general neder on everybody. He made one general neder on everybody. And that was his original point. His original point was he made a neder on everybody. And Chaim, I muted the television because it was clashing, but you could unmute it now if you could see how to do that with the remote control. I'm not sure how to do that because I can't unremote it. You have to do it locally. So the Gemara says, oh, I think I can hear you now. Perfect. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabba, the Chul Alma, everybody agrees, both Rabbi Kiva and Rabban, both Besham and Basil. Heichad Amar, Ilu HaYisedea, She'abu Beinechem, had I known that my father was amongst these people who I'm answering them, HaYisi Omer, what I would have said is Kolchem Asurim, which is really the same nusach he said earlier, but I would have added to my nusach Chutz Me'abba, except for my father. So if that's the case, I'm not really having charata. I'm not really changing the original neder. I'm just adding some clarification to it that it doesn't apply to my father. So in such a case, everybody agrees that this is not a neder shehuta miktsasai, because I'm actually still agreeing to the same neder. I'm just adding some clarification. So if that's the case, the chulu nasurin v'alva muter. There, everybody agrees that you do not say neder shehuta miktsasai hutar kuloi, because in fact you're not really being matter the neder. You're just adding clarification to the neder. Loi nechlaku, the machloikis b'shamai v'sil, the machloikis Rabbi Kiva the Chachamim. The only time Rabbi Kiva or Basil say that neder shehuta miktsasai hutar kuloi is ela ba'omer ilu hayisi idea she'aba beinechem. I know my father was there. I wouldn't have even expressed the first half of the neder the same way that I did. Rather, hayisi omer ploini uploini asurin v'haba muter. I would have never have said kulchem asurim to make a general isser which seems to include my father and then have to exclude my father. Rather, what I would have done is I would have itemized each person that the isser should be on and not mentioned that my father should be usher. So now, not only am I adding clarification by saying v'haba muter, I'm even wiser on how I expressed the original neder. And I have charata that I expressed it in general terms, and I should have itemized pliny, which would never have included my father in the first place. See, the difference between kulchem and pliny is kulchem means everybody, including my father, until I add chutz me'ab. However, when I say pliny, I'm literally itemizing who I want to create the issue for, and I don't put my father in the list. And not only that, I even specifically mentioned that my father's not on the list. So I have charata how I even said the original neder. There we will say neder shehuta miktsasai hutar kulei. So just to get
isn't Tashkadai did the same thing? What's the difference? When I'm just explaining, in order we either to list 10 people, I say the whole thing. I just want to speak in shorter terms. As much the tenets from that person. The name.
So we're going to see that. If I want not to include my father, we're actually going to see that there's different opinions as to how I should express it in a way that my father shouldn't be included. Now the Gemara seems to say that when you say Kol Chamasurim, that's something I would rather not have said if I want to exclude my father. Because at first glance, Kol Chamasurim seems to include my father. But I would have rather itemized each person individually, which means I never even said that my father should be usher. So that's what this person is saying he would rather have said. But Lamaisa, he's now being chayzer in how he expressed even the original neder. Now soon we're going to see that there's justification for someone, if he doesn't want to include his father, to actually say kolchem asur. But we'll get to that later. Right now, the Gemara's position is that if you answer everybody as a klal, as kolchem asurim, and then I change my mind and I say, I said I wish I would have said planu asurim, which is listing off each person plat. The Ran refers it as is saying it beprotos. That is a departure from the original nusach, and therefore you would say. So just to summarize this approach of Rabbah, is that when I agreed to my original nusach, I'm just clarifying it, that's not called Neder Shota Miktsasai, and nobody would hold under those circumstances that it's Hutar Kulai. Even Rebbe Kiva or even Beis Hill, who hold Neder Shota Miktsasai Hutar Kulai, that would only be if I'm also changing the nusach of the original Neder. And the case that our Rabbah gives an example of is when I originally expressed the Isser in general terms as a klal, kolchem asurim, and now I wish I would have said ploni v'ploni asur. That is the shita of Rabbah. But Rava argues. So let's go to Rava and see Rava shita. The reason we have to get it clear is because the Gemara is going to end up asking a kasha on Rava, and it's going to be hard to understand it unless we have clarity in what each Mandama Rabbah and Rava say. So again, just to chazer over, Rabbah holds that the machloikis between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is the same as the machloikis between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbanan, and the machloikis is only if I'm being soiser my original term. I went from kolchem to ploni. But if I would have stuck to the original term, then that's not a neder shota miktsasoi, and nobody holds there that hutar kul. That is the sheet of Rabbah. But Rava Amar, Rava says, the chula alma, everybody agrees. Kol heicha da Amar, if the person says, Ilu hayisi yodei ha'sha'ab b'nechem, had I known my father was amongst you, hayisi Omer, I would have said, ploini uploini asurin, va'aba mutar, kula mutar. So everybody holds that if I was Pirish, if I was chayzer from the way that I expressed the original Isser, I went from Kulchem and I went to Ploni. Everybody holds Neder Shota Miktsasai Hutar Kulai. So what Rava is saying, that Sai Rebbe Kiva and Sai the Rabbanon, Sai Beis Shammai and Sai Beis Hillel all agree that you do say Neder Shota Miktsasai Hutar Kulai when I was chayzer from my original nusach. So he's saying now Chiddush that the Rabbanon who argue on Rebbe Kiva, they agree that you do say Neder Shehutar Miktsasai Hutar Kulai. You do say it if I was chayzer from my original terminology. Loi nechlaku. There's only a machlokes ela ba'omer ilu hayisei deya shaba b'nechem hayisei omer kulchem asurim chutz me'abba. The machlokes is even if I am is not even if only if the machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and Chachamim, and therefore between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, is only if I am sticking with the original nusach that I said, and I stuck to the kolchem, and it's there where there's a machlokes. Beis Shammai savila Reb Meir. So now we're introducing a new sheet of Reb Meir, a new ingredient into why we're arguing about if I maintain the same nusach as before, do I consider that being mevatel the original neder or not? So Reb Meir holds tafais lashon rishon. Reb Meir holds when I say two things, and the Ran is going to explain in a minute. If someone said a reza chatas, a reza oila, what you say is tafais lashon rishon. You say that I'm making it into a chatas, not into an oila. Ubeis Hillel savrila Rabbi Yosy, and Rabbi Hillel holds Rabbi Yosy the Amar b'Gemar devar of Adon Nitbas. We look at the last thing that we said. So the Ran's going to explain, and we're learning it inside, but I want to speak it out first. The Ran's going to explain that if you hold Tfois Lashon Rishon, then the ikir of what I'm saying is Kolchem Asur, which is something that I'm agreeing to now, I'm just adding a parish. And therefore, I haven't really changed anything from what I said before. And therefore, Beishamai or the Bar Plukta of Rabbi Kiva, or we're saying that's going to be Rabbi Meir, holds that because the original nether is still there. Masha'enkein, Rabbi Kiva, still holds you look more at the last thing that he said. And therefore, when someone says, it's the chutz me'aba that's the ikr, which means we have changed the original nether, meaning it is a nether short miktsasai, and therefore it's chotar kula. So let's just see the Ran inside, who explains in a little bit of a greater detail how the machlokes of Reb Meir and the Rabbanan, whether you say tfos lashon rishon or say tfos lashon achron, how that impacts our shaila here. When you agreed to the original nusach of kol chabasurim, you're just adding to it the extra explanation of chutz me'aba, how that impacts that shaila. So let's see the halach around.
Why should it be called hit miktusoi when he's not mate? He's explaining what he's saying.
That's a beautiful kasha. That's precisely what I want to learn the Ran for, because the Ran actually specifically asks your kasha and answers it. So shkoyach for asking the kasha. Hayisi oimer pulchem asurim chutz min abba. V'sham yisavri yilach Meir damer tfois lashon rishon. Tisfor le Rabba. Rabba holds pluktayu b'maimud l'shoyne harishon. Unlike Rabba, who said that the machlokes is only when I'm being soiser my original lashon, Rabba holds when I'm being soiser my original lashon. Everybody holds another short mitzvah hutar kulai. The machlokes B'shama B'sil, Rabbi Kiva and the Rabbanan, is dafka when I am still keeping my original lashon of kolchan. B'tamai de B'shamai, what the svar of B'shamai holds that this is not considered a neder shehuter mitzvah, right? Mishum the savri like Reb Meir, because B'shamai holds like Reb Meir. The Omar in Maseches Tmura, Gabi Hareza Tmuras Oila, the Chazar v'Omar Harezu Tmura Shlomim. I said on one animal, Hareza Tmuras Oila, Hareza Tmuras Shlomim. It can't be both. So the halach is tvois lashon rishon. We say that the ikar of what he said was tmuras oila, and therefore by he tmuras oila. The ein ba shlomim klal. According to Meir, you totally ignore the second thing that he said, and the tmura is the tmuras oila. Rabbi Yosy Sfir lei, the rezu tmuras shlomim, it's tmuras shlomim, and really what it means is actually tmuras both. B'gemar devar of adam nitbas, you also consider the second half of what he said, and he did say Harezu Tumur Shlomim. Harezu Tumur Shlomim. So now let's finish up. I mean, even the camping that it should be both. That's right. So it's you're actually a stoiv. That's what you'll have to do with it. That's what the Yosy paskins. Uveshamay Sabri like Reb Meir. Veshamay Hozak Meir. The Amr Tvois Lashon Rishon. You look at the first thing that he said. Hilchach Kiva the Betchilas Dvorov. Since the beginning of his expression. The Hainu Kulchem Asurim, right? That was Kulchem Asurim was the first thing he said. So Harei Hein Kemoisha Aman Betchila. It's as if it's what that's what he said at the beginning. Aval Pi, even though now he's adding Shebigmar Dvorov, Sheomer Chutz Min Abba, Mashvi Tos B'Dvorov Harishonim. Even though when he's adding to the original Harei Kulchem Asurim, he's adding to it Chutz Me Abba, which now makes a tos in the first lashon of Kulchem Asurim. Loib kaptinon b'hachi. We're not concerned about that, and we still say the nether is intact. The ikar dibure shel adam hu tchilas dvarav. The ikar dibur of what we give credence to is the first thing that he said. And now the Ran's going to answer Chaim's kasha. The chehechi de hasam kisha dvaray harishon soiser dvaray ha'achrei. Just like over there, where the first dibur is actually a stira to the second dibur. It cannot be a tumuras oila and a tumuras shlomim. They're contradictory. Just like over there, according to Reb Meir, ein choshishin lemad amar b'soif klal, you completely ignore what he added afterwards. And he said, harezu tumuras shlomim, the hainu tumuras shlomim, hachanami in our case, even though Lakaya pointed out that it's not exactly the same. Av shedvarei ha'achroin, דהיינו חוץ מן אבא קיים, לפי שאינו סייצר דבר הראשון, אלא מבאר, even though our case is not quite the same as Reb Meir, because in our case, they can both coexist. In Reb Meir's case, Shlomim and Oila cannot coexist. It cannot be both Diburim. So when there's a mistake, we say, when the second Lashon contradicts the first Lashon, you focus on the first Lashon. So too, when the second Lashon, the Chutz Mi'aba, is not contradicting the first Lashon, it's only explaining it, nevertheless, Reb Meir's Shita will still have an impact. Mikal Mokim, Kivan the Svirlam, since Reb Meir holds the Besoishun Zesa, Toishun Lashon Rishon, since in the case where the two expressions contradict each other, we focus on the first. So b'she'ein tzorishun, even in our case where it's not a stira, the second word Chutz Mi'aba is just an explanation of the first. Oitzim ikar mitchilas diburi. We still focus more on the first dibur, and therefore the chivun shetchilas diburi maskim ima she'omar b'tchilas haneder, since his kula masurim is consistent with the Chutz Mi'aba. Therefore, miskayim lagabay acherim. Therefore, we look at the ikar as the kulchem asurim, and we say that that remains intact, keneged the other people, and they remain asur. The leka hacha huta miktsosai, and therefore they won't be huta miktsosai klal. There's no huta miktsosai at all. La'olam la'aviv la'olam la'hayi b'chal haneder. Because with the explanation, we're saying that the father was never b'chalal neder in the first place, and therefore there's no makom to say neder shehuter miktsasai huter kuloi. Uvisil savi lo kreb Yosy. Uvisil also kreb Yosy. Damek eshasoyshim dvarav zeh zeh hoychelach gemar dvarav. You look also and give credit to the second thing he said. So therefore, v'hachanami kishein soyshim here, even though they're not contradictory, Rabbi Yosy shita should still be relevant. You have to focus strongly on what the person said at the end of his statement. And therefore, there is a tos in the nether. So what we're doing now is we're creating a machlokes that's three people on one side and three people on the other side. Beis Hillel, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Yosy hold that this is a shtickle neder shabatal mitzasai, and therefore you shabatal kulai. But on the other side of the equation, Beis Shammai, the Rabbanan of Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Meir hold that you look at the first part of the neder, which was not ever contradicted; it was merely explained. It's not a neder shutim mitzasai, and therefore only the father will be muter, but the other people will be asur. So right now, what I've said is that Reb Meir and Beis Shammai and Reb Meir, Beis Shammai, and the Rabbanan all hold the same. But I have to make something very clear that the Gemara is going to say later, that just because we say that in order to explain Rav, in order to explain the Shita of Beis Shammai, and Rav, in order to explain the Shita of the Rabbanan, he's using Reb Meir, that doesn't necessarily mean that Reb Meir would agree to the Shita of the Rabbanan and the Shita of Beis Shammai. And that's going to come out later. But for now, we're saying that they're all one and the same. Okay, so now let's just get clear. We have two Shitas. Do we say Neder Shehuta Miktsasai Huta Kulai only applies when there's a direct contradiction between what he originally said and what he's saying now? He originally said Kolchem, and now he said Pliny, and that's the Shita of Rabbah, that everybody agrees that if there was no direct stira, if you said Kolchem before, you said Kolchem now, you don't say Neder Shutim Mitzasai Huta Kuloi. The only time even Rabbi Akiva holds Neder Shutim Mitzasai Huta Kuloi is only if there's a direct stira in the words that I said. And then you have Rav Shita who holds, no, if there's a direct stira, everybody would agree Neder Shutim Mitzasai Huta Kuloi. Rabbi wants to say that even if I'm saying the same thing, I'm saying Kolchem again, if you hold like Rabbi Yosy, that also we look at like it's a stira, and that also has the rule of neder shutim hutar kulai. So simply speaking, I would say that Rava is maker, because Rava holds that neder shutim hutar kulai even applies where I'm retaining the original wording that I said. I said kolchem asurim originally. I'm saying kolchem asurim now, and even there, Rava holds you would say neder shutim hutar kulai.
It comes out from that if somebody makes such a neder and he says kolchem asim chitz ma'ab, that right then and there the whole neder is butu.
Could be.
Because if you call that a neder sheit to it's not really hitte, because hitte it should mean that he start after that he has charute. But you say if you say
the reason why I wouldn't say that is because be'etzim, if he said it, if that's all he said, and that's what he said the first time, so then you would say that the second thing that he said is merely explaining the first thing.
Right.
But if he first said kolchem asurim without saying chutz me'aba, well then there was never any correction at all.
Right.
Okay, so let's see the Gemara's kasha. So now that we have clear the machloikis between Rabba and Rava, we can understand better the Gemara's kasha. It's going to be a little bit difficult to understand, but I think we'll be able to understand it now. Eisei Frank the Gemara. Rav Papa or Rava. Rav Papa is asking a kasha on Rava. So Rava, who said that if I contradict my original words, I said kolchem originally, and now I said ploni, everybody agrees neder shutim hutar kulai. The whole machloikis is only if I'm still retaining the original nusach that I said. I said kolchem before, and now I wish I would have said kolchem chutz me'aba. That's where there's a machloikis where there even Rabbi Kiva holds. Where there even there Rabbi Kiva holds that you say neder shutim hutar kulai using Rabbi Meir shita, and who did that would fit in with Rabbi Yosy over here. So Ketzad, the Gemara over there that originally brings down Rabbi Kiva is speaking about a case where someone made Nedarim not to eat, and then the Pesach was Shabbos and Yom Tov, and Rabbi Kiva said, just like he's allowed to eat his neder is bottle for Shabbos and Yom Tov, so too it's bottle in Ganzen. And then the Mishnah fears fighter Ketzad. So this is that same Mishnah on Daf Samach Vav, continuing to elaborate and clarify the Shita of Rabbi Kiva, and the Mishnah continues to elaborate and clarify the Shita of Rabbi Kiva using our case. Ketzad Amar Rabbi Kiva, Neder Shutim Mitzasei Hutar Kulai. Where else can we show the Shita of Rabbi Kiva of Neder Shutim Mitzasei Hutar Kulai? And the Mishnah literally goes back to our case and says, Koinim ke'eni nehena l'kolchem. I made a iser that all of you people should be usher to have enough for me. So koinim she'eni or she'ani nehena l'kolchem, you are all you people are usher to have enough for me like a korban. Huter echad mehen. If one of them became mutter, now this fits perfectly into our case where it turned out that one of these people was his father, and because of that, because of nidrish gogois, one of them becomes mutter. The halach is hutru kula; they all become mutter. That's case number one. Sheheni nen al kolchem. I said it in general terms. Huter echad men huter kula. Now the Mishnah here doesn't say clearly in the huter echad men what he meant. Till now, Rabba and Rava were clarifying, I have charata that I said, kolchem, I should have said ploni uploni. Or it could mean, I have charata that I said kolchem, I should have said kolchem chutz me'ab. The Mishnah here is not saying clear what happened. It just says what he originally said. Kodim she'eni nehena l'kolchem, that's what he originally said. Huter echad men, one of them becomes mutter, we're not sure exactly what the response was. Did he say later on, I wish I was at ploni uploni, which would be consistent with Rabba Shita? Or did he say, even in the case of kolchem chutz me'aba, even that would be huter echad mehen, and that would be consistent with Rabba Shita? Huter echad mehen, huter kula. That's the first case of the Mishnah. The second case of the Mishnah is she'eni nehena lozeh v'lozeh. This sounds like he originally said ploni uploni aser. Huter arishin huter kulam. once again, if we say one person is going to be mutter like the father, hutra kula. Again, it doesn't tell us what he said. I wish I would have said. It just said the Mishnah just quotes what he originally said, and it says hutra rishon hutra kula. So in both these two cases, we say neder shoda miktsasai hutra kulai. Hutra achrain. Now we're talking about the third case of this Mishnah later on. Hutra achrain, if the last person became mutter, achrain mutter, the last person is mutter, v'chul nasurim. I'm not sure yet what that means. The Gemara is going to address that later. But we're going to focus first on the first two cases. So Zok Gemara, Bishlem ala Rabba. If you learn like Rabba, that the only time Rabbi Kiva would say Neder Shoda Mitzatza Chotar Kuloi is only if I have charata from the original wording that I said, like I originally said Kulchem, and now I said, and I know my father is amongst this group, I would have said Pliny Asurim, the Abba Muteris. So how would Rabba explain these first two cases? Mukim la Reisha, the Amr Lozeh Vilozeh. The Reisha is the case of I originally said Koinim she'eni nehena lakolchem, and now I'm saying I wish I wouldn't have said that. I wish I would have said Pliny aser, Lazev Lazev would be aser, and my father's mutter. So that's a clear retraction of my original neder. I'm not even happy with the nusach in reference to the other people who I do on the aser. So you'll say neder shutim b'tzasir huttakulai, and that's why the psak is hutrakulo. The seifa is the second case that the Brisa quotes as lozev lozeh, where the Brisa says, the Mishnah says lozev lozeh. The Mishnah says hutar arishon hutrakulam. What's that case? That's a case where the Omar Lakolcha, I first said Pliny Aser, and I included even my father, and then I said, I wish I would have said differently. I wish I would have said Kolchem Asurim Hut Me'aba. So once again, I'm retracting from my original nusach. In either case, I'm retracting from my original nusach, and that's why we say Neder Shehuda Miktsasai Hutar Kulai. So, but let's think for a second. Up until now, the way Chaim explained even, is that if I originally said kolchem, which would include everybody, then I would have charata, and I'll say, I wish I would have said Pliny Aser and my father's mutter, because I never even used the word kolchem, which is inclusive, which sounds at first glance that it even includes to answer my father, that I then have to take my father out of the klal and say chutz me'aba. While if I said Pliny Asurim, I've never even expressed any issue towards my father yet. So that's how we first named on that if I want to exclude my father from the Isser, the better way to say it is Pliny Aser, where I'm never even using a language that would connotate any Isser at all towards my father, and then I say Chutz Me'ab. Now we're saying that the other way might also make sense. It's very possible that if I want to exclude my father, I don't want to say Pliny Aser. I'd actually rather say Kolchem Asurim. Why would you say that? Doesn't Kolchem Asurim mean more generally to include everybody? Yes, it does. But when I say Kolchem Asurim, I'm very quickly getting to the point where I say Chutz Me'aba. But if I say Pliny Asurim, I'm going down a long list. Mr. 1 is Aser, Mr. 2 is Aser, Mr. 3 is Aser, and during all this time, it seems like maybe I'm going to include my father in the Isser. So I'd rather say Kolchem Asurim, so I can immediately continue to explain Chutz Me'aba, rather than list off each person individually, where as I'm making this long list till I get to the end and say Chutz Me'aba, a person might think that I'm going to include my father as well. So therefore, the Chiddush of this Brisa is telling us whether the original nusach was kolchem, and I'm having charata, and I'm wishing I would have said lazeh, or whether my original nusach was lazeh, and now I wish I would have said kolchem. Either way, that's a departure from what I originally said, and therefore, in that case only would we say neder shotim miktsasai hutar kulai, and even in this case, that's only Rabbi Kiva who subscribes to that halacha of Neder Shoter Miktsasa Hoter Kuloi. But of course, the Rabbanon argue. So that's beautiful for how Rabbah would interpret this Mishnah. But if you learn like Rava, where everybody agrees that if I departed from my original nusach, you say Neder Shoter Miktsasa Hoter Kuloi, and the Machlokes is only in one case where I'm sticking to my original nusach. There was the Machlokes, and there, even in that case, does Rabbi Kiva hold that you say Neder Shoter Miktsasa Hoter Kuloi? How are you going to understand the two separate cases listed off in the Mishnah? Bishlam Reisha, I would understand the first of the two cases where the Mishnah quotes as saying, that would be easy to understand. I would say that there was no change in his language. He said originally Kulchem, and now he says, had I known my father was amongst them, I would have still said Kulchem. And that's a case where Rabbi Kiva holds Neder Shoter Miktsasa Hoter Kuloi, and the Rabbanan hold not. It would be Gavaltic. Ella, Seifa. But the second case is going to be problematic. Because the second case, how are we going to explain the second case? Are we going to say it's speaking where I said originally Pliny, and I'm sticking with Pliny? That wouldn't make any sense. Because that's exactly the same case as the first case. Why would I repeat the same case twice? Ella, what you're going to have to say is Seifa the Amr Lezeh, which the Ran tells us means L'chatchila I said L'kolchem, and now I'm saying I wish I said Lezeh, where I departed from my original nusach. The problem is, according to Rava, if I departed from my original nusach, everybody agrees that Neder Shoter Miktsasa Hoter Kuloi. So Rabbi Kiva, is this the Mishnah explaining the Shita of Rabbi Kiva? Am I pligi Rabbanalei? Why would the Rabbanan argue? According to you, Rava, everybody agrees when I changed my original nusach from Kulchem to Zelazeh. The Amr Divrei Kol Mutter. You said everybody agrees there. You say Neder Shoter Miktsasa Hoter Kuloi. So how could the Mishnah elaborate on Rabbi Kiva's Shita of Neder Shoter Miktsasa Hoter Kuloi, include a case where even the Rabbanan agree? We're trying to highlight the Chiddush of Rabbi Kiva, who holds Neder Shoter Miktsasa Hoter Kuloi. So Amalei Rava. So Rava said, okay, you have a kash on me, and I'll get to the Teretun. But you think it's any better according to Rabba? Ulu Rabba mi nicha, and I skipped out Rabbi Kiva because the Ram takes that out of the Nusach. Ulu Rabba mi nicha, you think it's any better according to Rabba? Think about it. You might have understood the first case, but Sefer b'Mukum. What was the second case? The Amar L'Kulchem. So let's go back to the previous daf and analyze the second and third case. And we'll see that according to Rabbah, it's not so geshmak either. So going back to the third case. So let's go back to all three cases. I'm sorry. So the first case was Koinim Sheni Nehena L'Kulchem, Huter Echad Ben Huter Kulam. If one becomes mutter, they're all mutter. Why? Because, as we said, it's a departure from the original nusach. His original nusach was L'Kulchem, and now he's saying, I wish I would have said Pliny. But look at the second case. So that's where I originally said Pliny, and now I say I wish I would have said Kulchem. So what does it say? It says Huter Harishon Huter Kulam. What do you mean Huter Harishon? Huter Echad Mehen. It doesn't matter who became mutter. If anyone became mutter, like Lamashal, one of them was my father, they're all mutter. Why is it Huter Harishon Huter Kulam? And in the third case, Huter Echad. Who's the first? Who's the last? There's no first or last here. It's any one of the people. If they turn out being my father, then I got charata. So the words of the Mishnah itself, talking about Huter Harishon, Huter Achron, does not fit, is not explained adequately the way you're learning Pshat, even according to Rabbah. So anyway, your Pshat in how you understood this Mishnah cannot be true. So I'll tell you, Zok.
In the middle, how if you say loy lezeh, right?
Right.
I make your usa. His father was never included. So how do you take him out?
No,
But
he said
who said
Lazar, he pointed to everybody. He actually pointed to everybody, including his
pointed to his
father.
father also?
Yeah, but he didn't recognize it yet as his father.
I
So
thought that Lazar means he's not including. So that's why he's never.
Oh, you mean, well, if he originally said Zev, 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 according to in the second case where he originally said Zev, 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 if he didn't speak on his father, so then it's not a nidrish kaga. He never asked his father. So it must be he said Zev and he pointed to his father as well, just not realizing that it was his father.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's not a nidrish kaga. He never asked his father. So the problem here is we're focusing now on what does it mean Huter Harishoin, Huter Achroin. It's not Rishon Achroin, it's any one of them that ends up being his father. So Zok the Gemara will Rabba mi nicha Seifa b'may mukimla. How are you going to explain the Seifa? Domer lekulchem Hai dein hu Rishon, the Hai dein hu Achroin. What is the Rishon and the Achroin that the Mishnah says? What is that referring to? Ella, because of that, I'm going to tell you there's a whole different pshat in this Mishnah that has nothing to do with our Shaila. Ela Reisha da Amr Lekulchem. The Reisha is speaking where you either according to Rabbah, it's speaking where he originally said Kulchem, and now he's saying Pliny, which was a departure. Or according to me, it could be speaking where originally said Lekulchem, and even when he changed his mind, he said Lekulchem, he's just adding Chutz Mei Abba. And there, only according to Rabbi Kiva, do you say Neder Sholim Miktsasei Hutakuloi. So what are the second two cases? The Seifa Kegoin Shetolon Zebo Zeh, V'Omar Ploini Kaploini Uploini Kaploini. The second half of the Mishnah is not even talking about Neder Sholim Miktsasei. It's talking about a case where I said, I see a whole bunch of people eating my pears, and I point to one guy and say, you should be Usher of Al Nechasim. And then I point to the next guy, and you should be like the first guy. And then I point to the third guy and said, you should be like the second guy. And then you should be like the third guy. You should be like the fourth guy. So as I'm answering each person, I'm not creating a new Isser. I'm piggybacking every additional person on the fellow before. Now that that's what the Mishnah means, so then it has nothing to do with the Machlokes of Rabbah and Rava. And now let's look again at the Lashon Mishnah to see how beautifully and how geschmack and how naturally it reads. So let's have a look at it. Keter Amar Rabbi Kiva, Neder Shotem Miktsasei Huter Kuloi, is Kodim She'eni Nehanu Lekulchem, Huter Echad Ben Huter Kulam. And that's either where I change the nusach from Kulchem to Ploini Uploini, or even if I kept the nusach from Kulchem to Kulchem, according to Rava. And now we have a new case.
Is anybody.
That's right. And that means anybody, not necessarily the first. And now we have a new case. What if I said She'eni Nehanu Loy Lozeh V'Loy Lozeh, and it was piggybacking the second on the first and the third on the second and so on and so forth, then Hutter Rishon, if the first person ended up being my father, well, that means the first person's nether was never Chal. So everybody who I piggybacked on him would also not be Chal. Hutter Kulam. But Hutter or Achron, if only the last person ended up being the person who I don't want to have the nether, well then Achron Mutter V'Chula Nasturin, because the rest of them weren't hutar, and therefore they were piggybacked on somebody who ba'atzim was also. So now the Mishnah is beautiful and everything makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's see the Gemara Vayter.
But that's only Ruve learning.
Well,
like
that fits into Rava and to Rabba, because the first case is the only case that's discussing a neder shohuter miktsasei, and it could be, you could learn it either where I changed the nusach, and that would be according to Rabbah, or you could learn it even when I kept the same nusach, and that would be only according to Rav. Okay, Zok the Gemara Vayter. Dekanami, I'll prove it to you, because there's another case that we didn't quote, and that is the Tanya we learned at Brisa that says Huter Amtsoi. What if a guy in the middle was the one whose nether was removed? Then Heimenu Ulamata, anybody after him who was piggybacked on him, Mutarin. But Ulamaila Surin, and one before was also. So you clearly see that it's a case where one was being piggybacked on the next, and not the case of Hutter Miktsasei. So we've dodged one bullet on behalf of Rava. Now we have another kasha. Eisvei Rav Ada bar Ava Rav. Now Rav Ada bar Ava, I want to ask a kasha to Rav. Someone said Koinim botzel shanitoyim. I'm no longer going to eat onions. I'm asking myself to eat onions. Why? Botzel ralalev. Onions are bad for your heart. Amrullah, they told him, you don't have your information clearly, because valaya kufri, there's a certain type of onion that's called a kufri onion. Yafalalev, that's good for your heart. So it's another toss. So the halach is hutter bekufri. He never would have made a nether if he knew it was good for his heart. So therefore, the onion that's a kufri would be mutter for him to eat. But v'loy bekufri bilvad. Not only do we say neder shutter mektsasai hutter mektsasai, v'loy bekufri bilvad hutter ele b'cholav etzolim. He's mutter on all onions. Neder shutter mektsasai hutter kulai. My sahaya, there was actually a story that this occurred. V'tira Rabbi Meir b'cholav etzolim. And Rabbi Meir said, "Neder shuter mitzasai huter kulai." My love, what was the case where Rabbi Meir said, "Neder shuter mitzasai huter kulai"? The Amari said, "Ilu hayisi idea shakur for yafal aleiv." Had I known that this onion was good for my heart, hayisi aimer kolav etzolim asurim v'chufri mutter. So that's a case where I'm sticking to the original language, and I'm just excluding one. Now, didn't we just say that under these circumstances, Reb Meir holds like the Rabbanon, holds like Beis Shammai, that toughest lashon rishon, and you say that it's not a neder shuter muktzasai, and it's just a perish, and oy bazoi, he should only be mutter on the betzalim of Kilfri, but not every others. Yet you see Reb Meir himself, who we partnered up with the Rabbanan of Rabbi Kiva and Beis Shammai, and we said that he holds that neder should muktzasai lo yoter kuloi. In a case where I'm being maimed and I'm sticking to the same nusach, I'm just adding a clarification. So it's shver. Zok Gemara loy. That's not the case. Rather, it's ba'omer ilu hayisi idea shakufi yafel aleiv hayisi omer. I would have said Bato ployni asurin v'kufri mutter. It's speaking in a case where he was chayzer from his original nusach as well, and there, as Rava said, everybody agrees in such a case that neder shuter muktzasai hutar kulai. Rav Meir aliba de Rabbi Kiva v'aliba de Rabbanan, and Rav Meir could fit in good according to everybody. Zok tahelu gemara. Actually, let's stop here, and let's just learn. We have one more minute. Oh, it's 7:50. We don't even have one more minute. But Aval Pikein, let's just see the round on the last article. Eis pe Rab Adal Rava. Loimar the Kachal Rava. It's shver on Rava. The Omar b'maymid pligi, that the machlokes is only if I'm maintaining my original nusach. I originally said kolchem, and now I'm saying kolchem, but chutz me'al. Umukei Beis Shammai Reb Meir, we said earlier that Beis Shammai would work with the shita of Reb Meir to say toughest lashon rishon, and therefore, as the Ran explained, it's not a complete chazar from his original nether, and therefore you don't say neder shuter muktzasai hutar kulai. And here is the important point. Umid inu Reb Meir, the Baal were saying that Beis Shammai has to hold of Reb Meir in order for Beis Shammai to hold that it's not a neder shuter muktzasai. Mashal de Reb Meir nami sfir like Vasayu will say that Reb Meir holds like Beis Shammai as well. The Aviv mutter v'chulun asurim, that in this case you don't say neder shuter muktzasai hutar kulai, rather only the father who we want to exclude would be mutter, but the rest of them would be asur. But the problem is v'chan hitter Reb Meir kol b'solom. The problem is in this case Reb Meir said they're all mutter, which is inconsistent with what Beis Shammai would have said. Dr. Ran, just in case you didn't notice, in the Kachal Rabbah, this case is shver on Rabbah as well. Why? The Amar de b'maymid divrei hakoil kulon asurin v'aviv mutter. Rabbah held that everybody agrees. Sai Beis Shammai, Sai Beis Hillel, Sai Rabbi Kiva, Sai the Bar Plukta of Rabbi Kiva. Everybody holds that if you were sticking to the same nusach, for sure the father would be mutter, but everybody else would be asur. The Im came based on that. Reb Meir shehiter kol betzolim the Amar Kaman. In this case, Reb Meir said all of the betzolim are mutter, But according to the way Rabbah learned it, everybody agrees that if I didn't change the nusach, it wouldn't be mutter. Everything would only be mutter la'avim. So only the bitzolim of kufri should be mutter. So why are we only asking the kasha on Rabbah? The Gemara should have posed this kasha to Rabbah as well. Dr. Ram, that's true. Elamishum dahachmas nisan pani Reb Meir behedya. Since this Mishnah quotes Reb Meir as the person who said that all the bitzolim are mutter, and Rabbah never talked about Reb Meir. It's only Rabbah who introduced Reb Meir to the scene here. But Rabbah who da'at greatly Reb Meir, since it's Rabbah who introduced Reb Meir and said that Reb Meir is consistent with Beis Shammai, actually Rabbah, that's why Rabbi Ada asked the kasha on Rabbah. But Avada, this kasha would be equally shver on Rabbah. Okay, so let's stop here, and the Mitzvah will be Mamshach tomorrow. Be'ezus Hashem Yisborach.
Tomorrow,
Everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Are you gonna be here tomorrow, Be'ezus Hashem?
Yes, B'li Neder, I will be there for tomorrow.
Yeah, have an easy drive.
Have a safe trip.
Oh, man, thank you.
On the side
Appreciate it.
streets.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'm surprised you didn't make a reference like it's a bit of a dry shirt today. Yeah, I'm surprised that you didn't make a reference at least about the herring and the onions, or at least the onions.